I take these clients out. We find a house. We get to the closing table. All of a sudden, change of heart. We don't want to do this. It was right before, literally in the chairs outside the closing table with the closer.
On your first transaction.
Drive back and we walk through the house. It had a pretty large, probably like 10 by 12 walk-in closet. I just look at the wall and there's this outline of a rectangle on the wall. And I just like pushed on it and it opened up a hidden room in the back of the wall. And then it swings open. It was all on hinges and it was all perfect. We get in there and there's lights, there's water filtration system, there's hooks on the ceiling. And so this was before marijuana was legal. They had a secret grow operation in the basement of their house that they were hiding, that they didn't want the buyers to know about. This was actually a huge selling point to my buyers because they also had a secret grow operation in their house and 100% sold them on the home. And they were like, we don't care if they don't pay off the sewer assessment. Let's just get us back to the closing table as quick as we can.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mastery Podcast, everyone. Today, I am with Isaac Lanctot, and this guy is a legend in my mind and in the mind of many others. Isaac is someone who is an entrepreneur to the heart. He has several businesses that he has started and runs, really impacting the lives of a lot of people around him, and is someone that I look to as an example, as a mentor, as someone who has been in the real estate industry through a shift. Isaac actually started just before, you said
2005? Yep. Mm-hmm.
So before the big crash, the great recession, and you lived to tell the tale. And now here we are all these years later, and it looks like we're, in a shifting market again. Not quite sure where it's going, but this is going to be a really good episode for those who are in the real estate industry on many fronts. The other part I'd love to talk about, and we'll get to, is the fact that as Isaac is a business owner with all these different businesses, really real estate is the hub, and there's so much opportunity for those in this industry beyond just selling real estate. So Isaac, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for a great introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so let's start with this. Just give us a little background about who you are, your family, and then I'd love to hear your journey of how you got into real estate.
Sure. Yeah. Background, been, in Spokane since 92. So we moved up from California, got established here. Just family wanted to go to a specific church in the area, and we just set roots and have been here ever since. Got into real estate early on, actually, before I even got licensed. My cousin, he actually was considered one of the real estate experts in the state, traveling speaker, did a lot of conferences and things like that. So when I was right about 11 years old, 12 years old, in that range, he bought a rental property here in Spokane and helped me, actually learn about real estate in general. Taught me, what it takes to actually purchase a house and what you need to do to find good tenants and improve the property. So that got me pretty well hooked. And then in high school, one of my friends, their family would pay me to go around and find distressed properties for them so they could purchase them and turn them into either rentals or flip them and make money that way. So I would get $200 to $500 for every property that they bought. And that was, just another way for me to kind of get into it. And then college came around. I went to Whitworth, and just being local in Spokane, I didn't necessarily see the cost benefit of living in the dorms. So purchased my first house with my dad when I was 19. We renovated that. I rented it out, all the rooms, to friends. So cash flowed that property to pay my mortgage, and then had a little bit extra. Used that to invest into another property, and then just kind of kept going from there. Through that process, my real estate agent actually recruited me to get licensed because she was impressed with, I guess, just how easily I was picking up the industry and how it worked there. So that's how I got into real estate.
There's so many just intriguing things to me as you share that at 12 years old, you had someone already investing in you, teaching you kind of the ropes. I think about me when I was 12, I was rollerblading and playing video games,
I was doing that too.
I know.
Yes.
Sure.
But fixing up a rental property on the weekends. So,
I mean, how cool is that, just to kind of, in such a young development, part of your life to have that infused in there. And then in high school that you're looking for distressed properties, getting paid a commission, not
Early
working at
on.
McDonald's or wherever, all good things. And yet you kind of had it just in the blood from such an early age. And in fact, even in this room right now, Brandon, our sound tech, lived at that college house.
Yes, he did.
I used to hang out at that college house, and there were a lot of dudes in there. And,
we had 9 at one point, so it was a little crowded, but
but
it worked out.
you were an investment. You were investing in real estate when you were in college, and you recognized that when you saw the dorm cost, like, wait a second, there's got to be a better way. And so from early on, you invested well, and that gave you different opportunities. And then, of course, that was noticed by a professional in the industry, and they invited you in. So talk to us about, once you got in, what that first maybe year or so was like before things started shifting, and what did your world look like?
Yeah, so the first couple of years was kind of when the shift was happening, kind of the onset. We had the initial uptick between 2005, 2006, 2007 when I was in it. When I was doing that, I was actually still at Whitworth, so I was doing it after classes, weekends, balancing, between those. It was a little bit of how kind of COVID was. We were still having offers over asking price, the majority of the time, multiple offers. If you didn't get into a house in the first 12 hours of it getting listed, you were not actually going to get an offer in time for your clients. So a little bit of a frenzy back and forth. So I started at Keller Williams then. That was my initial brokerage, and, worked on the team that my agent brought me into. So I was working with her. About a year into it, a little less, I switched from Keller Williams and actually worked for Ron Hansen at Century 21 Advanta. And so launched as an individual agent through that, and learned the ropes, through him. Traditional open houses, door knocking, going around, taking calls, from the office, managing the phones. So more of the, traditional real estate focus from the onset. But yeah, we did that for a couple of years before, really things started to regress. And then made a little bit of a shift in focus once that happened. And just worked through all the ups and downs. So yeah.
So when the market started shifting, and it was sort of one of those like, okay, things are not what they were.
Yeah.
How did you adjust to that market? What did your business look like? How did you survive it when so many didn't?
Yeah. So when basically the shift happened, at that point in time, one of the things that was a really big eye opener was decreasing costs when my fellow agents weren't at the time. One of the big things that Ron actually instilled in me at that moment in time is actually having a profitable business, even when things are changing and there's not as much in the sales pipeline. So we as a family just really dove into what the real estate expenses were, what we could afford, what we couldn't, cut it back to as little as possible.
And when you talk about real estate expenses,
what
do you mean by that?
So marketing, anything that you're actually spending on additional. We didn't go out and get the flashy car to take people on showings. We stopped some of the mailers. We instead doing activities that didn't have an actual dollar amount attached to it, more just your time, effort, and focus into the industry. The other thing I did, I wasn't ashamed to have a second job. So during that time, I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, 40 to 50 hours on a daytime job, and then working nights, weekends on real estate. So that's what kept me going. And through, the next 4 or 5 years of a downturn in the economy and the market, most of my class at Keller Williams that actually started with me, it was unfortunate, but they didn't actually make that shift to saving and reducing costs then, and they pretty much 100% got out of the business at that time. Either lost everything or barely were scraping by. So that was watching that happen. Really, I was happy that I was able to actually shift with the market at that time to where I could come out on the other side and still be all right. So
yeah. Well, there's a few things that you highlighted in there that are super important. One, you said you weren't ashamed to take a second job, right? So my guess is this go around in the market shift, that's not something that you have to likely deal with. But at that period in your early real estate career, you still recognize that this is where you want to be. It's what you want to do. I'm sure your family was in the same direction with you in that. And you guys made sacrifices financially with your time, but you didn't quit real estate. You found out how to make it work. Yeah. And that's I think important for some of those agents to hear right now who maybe only sell a few houses a year, are starting up, but it's still doable. You just have to double down. And when you think about your previous experience, what are a couple like specific things when it comes to the financial side, right? Like we're kind of entering into it already, but like, do you have a certain benchmark of saying, you know what, you need to look at you need to, of course, have a real clear understanding of your personal budget, your business budget. But what kind of reserves do you have in place? How do you evaluate statistically what marketing is working, what's not? Like, what are some of those nuts and bolts for people? Yeah.
And what we try and do on all of the businesses that we try and have 6 months in reserves, which is actually higher than maybe what is honestly recommended by most experts, somewhere in that like 3 to 6 range. You know, when people are more fiscally conservative, they're probably in the 12-month range is like their goal. So we're kind of right in the, in the middle ground of that. So we're always just trying to reevaluate, that portion of the business just to make sure if there is, that little piece. I think personally that number sticks with me because in I think it was the end of 2011 into 2012, I actually had a 6-month window where I didn't sell a house. And there were a lot of people that were doing that. So I think a little bit in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, the worst moment in my career, I went 6 months without actually closing a deal. So if I can never obviously recreate that moment, then I'm fine. So, and we're set up a little bit more secure right now going into this shift for that. So I feel comfortable, with that. On the expense side, I kind of actually just have focused on tracking where the leads are coming from, where the clients are coming from, what did we invest into it. So my bare minimum is $3 to 1 return on investment. Okay. So if I'm investing $1 and I'm not seeing $3 in return for that marketing or that specific piece of actual real estate or lead generation, then I'm going to reevaluate it after 6 to 12 months and see if that's something that we, either need to put more focus into and we're just not putting the correct effort and time into it, or, is that just a bad investment? Right. So those are where we do that. And we have about 6 or 7 different sources of leads and for lead generation. And that's all evaluated the same way across the board.
Yeah. So what do you guys use to track those things? Like what's your process and procedure to actually be able to look at those numbers?
Yeah. No, great question. So, we track everybody in our CRM, tag them from where the actual source was. We have a different spreadsheet that we use to actually keep those organized so we can actually go back year over year and see, what was our return on investment on each aspect. What percentage is coming from, each source, or how much of it is Sphere or actually paid leads, or is it, open houses, or where are we getting, these leads from? So the more you know about your business, the more you can actually tailor the next year to what actually works expense-wise versus, what you did in the past. So knowledge is key on that.
Yeah, and that's what so many people don't have often. And I'm sure for some of us, listening, like, okay, sounds like Isaac's, over the years you've grown in this and now you have a really multi-tiered system. What about for the people who are, maybe a single agent at this point? I know you're running a team, multiple businesses. For someone just sort of starting out, like what's just like a baby step one to kind of get started? Like what would be your encouragement be to that newer agent or newer business owner, how to get started in tracking numbers?
It's a really good question. And when I switched over to where I was actually being purposeful about growing my real estate business, I picked one source besides my sphere to actually focus on. So, referrals and the people you know. I mean, those should, in my opinion, that should always be your primary source of sourcing your business. So your real estate transactions should come from that group. Again, industry, you can hear anywhere from 50% to 90%, and that's what should be your percentage. Some people, they'll outright say, I live by referrals, I live by my sphere. That's 100% of my business. And that's great. I've always shot for 50%. So, and the reason why is when I really started putting the effort into it, I picked just one thing that I wanted to be an expert on, and one thing that I really wanted to be better than standard in the market. And for me, that was just a hyper focus on speed to lead. So whenever I was getting a referral or I was getting a paid lead coming to my email, I was trying to contact that potential client in 10 seconds.
Okay.
And that was my mentality going into it, because I went to a conference, actually the first family reunion I ever went to with Keller Williams, and I sat in on a Realtor.com presentation, and I was one of their clients, but I wasn't getting any return on my investment, and so I was trying to hear from their sales rep, like what are people doing in the nation to have success,
right?
And because I was spending about $500 a month on leads through them, and I wasn't having any success. I was like here or there every so often, but it just felt like this expense monthly that I was getting zero return on. And in that conference, in that presentation, he said the nationwide average is 17 seconds. So when a lead comes in, the average is 17 seconds.
In terms of the average response time is 17
seconds. So when that actually hits, if you're not calling in less than 17 seconds, then you're actually below average.
Right.
And my mindset up until that meeting was, I'm going to get back to these leads in 5 to 10 minutes. And I thought that was real good. I was like, oh, hey, if I'm doing this in 10 minutes, that seems real quick. So I must be crushing it. And it was a huge eye opener in that moment where it's like, if you're at 5 to 10 minutes, somebody's been talking to them for 5 to 10 minutes and you're not going to get anything out of it. And the other thing that he followed it up with was the first person to actually make the call and to connect with that potential client, potential buyer, 72% of the time, they would become their agent. Mm-hmm. So that mindset shift into what is expected of me in that moment changed. And it doesn't have to be speed to lead. If somebody's new coming into it, they need to pick one, maybe two things that they want to be really good at. Mm-hmm. And I've seen other agents new into the business where they focus on for sale by owners, they focus on open houses, any of those things. Whatever you need to do, you need to know what the industry, I guess, averages, and you need to excel and be better than the average agent in whatever your primary focus is. Yeah. So that's my advice on new agents.
It's really good. And what you're basing that off of too, back to the realtor one, is one, you saw you weren't getting a good ROI. Mm-mm. And you went into something to figure out what could be done different possibly, or if it actually, you were doing things right and it just wasn't the right opportunity for you. So you should put your money somewhere else. But you went into that not knowing the numbers you needed to know, but then you learned the numbers and then you adjusted your business based on knowing the new numbers. Yep. And as the industry has been just on fire in terms of momentum the last several years, it's been easy to just sort of let the tide of rising prices and buyer interest and low interest rates kind of take front seat. You don't have to pay attention to those things as much. But suddenly, there's a lot of people who either newer in the business, but even those who've been in the business a long time, if they weren't around for the first shift and made it through, you could have been in the industry for several good years, and all of a sudden you may feel a bit like the new person again. Like, what do I do with
what's
this?
Happening? Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned something within that around the 3x return. Mm-hmm. And back to like fiscal responsibility and tightening down the hatches when the market changes, depending whether it's coming back this spring hard or it maybe keeps going down. We don't know, but you have a benchmark that is going to keep you around in business probably a lot longer than if you didn't. And so what made you get to that? For every dollar I put into marketing, I need a baseline of $3 back.
Yeah. And that is, bare minimum for me and this structure. And for that, it's based off of, we have employees now, and so for every dollar that I spend, I need that return to cover, one, the expense, two, there's payroll, and there's people in the business that are relying on me getting a return for the business.
Right.
So if it's not revenue focused and we're just spending a dollar to make a dollar, then we're spinning our wheels and the business isn't actually able to have longevity like you were talking about. And then you have to look at cuts. You have to look at, reduction in staff. And for me, that's not something I'm going to do. So we have to structure the business around how we can be stronger from here and into the future and structured around that. So that's why I do that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some more into this idea of, you obviously have employees. Talk to us about your real estate team. Who's it comprised of at the moment?
Oh, sure.
And obviously, like as an owner of a business, as a boss, you never want to have to let go of great people, right? And that is obviously very important to you. So talk to us about your structure that you have, and then how do you run that in such a way where you are making the best opportunities possible for the people on your team?
Yeah. No, great question. So we have basically two branches on the real estate business. My business partner is Brian Monk. So we own Heart and Homes Northwest together. My wife is obviously Beth. She's a partner in the business as well. So kind of the three of us own and operate, the company jointly. We have our sales side of it, which is all of our licensed real estate agents who are operating and working with clients. So it's Brian, myself, Jed Vick. Beth works with clients every so often. So she will interact with buyers and sellers. And then we've got another one, Rodrigo, who actually heads up our inside sales and helps buyers.
Okay.
So that's the sales side of it. We, obviously there it's structured where the company actually brings clients to the agents. So when they're on the team, we supply that. The other piece is, they're encouraged to do the same type of activities, open houses, door knocking, any of the things that, are going to increase their direct business. We also, do cold calling a couple times, couple hours a day usually is what we're shooting for. The daily activity is we're trying to have, 20 good conversations about real estate every single day. That's the mentality of the team. The other side of it is our admin side. Beth runs that for us. So she's our director of operations. Everything that falls under our admin side is our transaction coordinators and office managers, marketing. So we have Melanie Nelson. She's our manager for our transaction coordinators, which we also have a separate transaction coordinating business that flows through Heart and Homes Northwest. So we actually help other teams and other agents with their transaction management. So through that, we're able to actually pay bonuses to our transaction coordinators to where they're making a better wage than where they may be making money elsewhere. So it's just an added way to keep good employees. And then another one, we have Rachel as a transaction coordinator, and we have Gwendy as a transaction coordinator. But Gwendy also manages our Newport office for us. And then we have a marketing person named Becca who's on the team. So it's a full scale business that operates all on its own. So,
well, it's, as you go through each of those things, I'm sure for, those who are listening, it's like, eventually you kind of just lose track of like, okay, there's whoa. And it's like you keep it in your head, but also that goes back to, you have systems in place and that's allowed you to build where you are. So in terms of, One thing that's always interesting, and you highlighted this before, and in my previous brokerage to where I'm at now, before it was kind of cold calling was just this sort of dirty word almost. And it still is. If you go on the Facebook pages with real estate in our local town, it's like there's sort of these two tribes of like, and I would dare say the more vocal tribe is the one who is just not for cold calling, right?
Correct.
And not to go too far into that, but there's an element of value there. When I went to this, I'm at Keller Williams now, and I used to kind of be this anti-cold call, but then through education, different experiences, it's like, okay, you don't ever want to lose your sphere. Right. Of course not. Those are, like you said, those are your number ones, but there's some ways to expedite growth, because if you believe in your business, you believe that you're going to treat people well and serve them well, why would you not expand that to other people? Right. But enough of me talking about it. Talk to me about the value of cold calling as you see it, and why it's a good thing to have in tandem with, of course, taking really good care of your sphere.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I deviate from a lot of people in the industry, because like you said, there are kind of two sides to this whole conversation. Paid leads and cold calling are kind of the two things that you hear most people saying. Why are you doing that? What's the reason behind that? Because you're just wasting your money if you put that same money into just, actually talking to your sphere or doing client events, past clients. You can get the same return. And to their point, there is something to be said about that.
Yeah.
And but the one thing that I've seen and what I've noticed is that when we're doing these additional lead generation and this additional like lead source, all it's doing is actually getting us in touch and interacting with people we would have never actually met or never would have known if we didn't have that activity going within the team. So we are actually increasing our sphere and our past clients faster because we are meeting and talking to strangers that we didn't know before that. And so we, and it's great to get referrals. A lot of the statistics are saying that if you get one or maybe two referrals from either past clients or your sphere, you're doing really, really great. Mm-hmm. But on cold calling or lead generation to strangers, we're having anywhere from 100 to 200 conversations and interactions with people we never knew before every week. So when you start to, calculate that, that's where I've seen that success. And we've turned people, strangers into people who are, going to be serving on our board of directors for our foundation. That's Heart and Homes Foundation is one we're launching in conjunction to our for-profit business. So 2 of our clients that we met through our lead generation source became so close to us through the process that they're actually going to serve on the board of directors for our foundation. So those are things we would have never had, and those are people we would have never met if we didn't go through the activities of cold calling or buying internet leads and following up on those sources. So for me, I've seen very tangible benefits of having these mindsets, which maybe other people aren't. It's sure. Like if they've gone through those activities and maybe they haven't had that positive of a result, so they think it's something that they're just going to stay away from or something they don't want to do. But for me, it's been all positive.
Real Estate Mastery family, thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to quickly bring to your attention one of the biggest pain points in the investment and real estate community, and that is roofs that go bad. What can happen, of course, is if you get a leak through a roof, it can destroy the entire interior of your home. If you're having a real estate transaction and a roof comes up in a home inspection and the buyer says, hey, we want a new roof, and by the way, that's going to cost $30,000. Or if you're a long-term investor and you have a property that has a roof replacement, that can wipe out years of profitability. And so we've decided to partner with a company called Roofmaxx, who actually specializes in extending the life of older asphalt shingle roofs to save you both time
and money. And how it actually works is as simple as it's a bio oil they spray onto those shingles, it absorbs in, and it takes away that brittleness, extending the life of an asphalt roof on average between 6 to 8 years, and has a 5-year transferable warranty. So if you ever go to sell that property, it goes with that property at a fraction of the price of replacement, typically around 15%. So if you're interested, click the link in the description for your free evaluation today.
Yeah. Do you think that it's something even kind of going back to sticking with it in real estate? You know, when the market was bad, you're working a full-time job, but you're still doing real estate. Like there's just there's a challenge to that, and you pushed through. I know for me, I get super uncomfortable making my cold calls or trying to build my relationships with home inspectors and just calling down the list, you know, with our roofing business, things like that. But it's like, I know just through experience, you push through and eventually it's worth those results. But do you think that in part it's just one of those like would your encouragement be, I guess I would ask, to those who've maybe tried it, failed, feel super awkward or maybe judged or whatever, to just keep pushing? Like what would your encouragement be to the person who's like, okay, I'm willing to try that. How long do I have to do it for till I get comfortable? What does it look like? Give us just a little pep talk on that, I guess.
Yeah, there is a mindset behind it if you want to have success. And I was actually listening to someone online, and basically the whole conversation was that good salespeople forget the bad very quickly. And that can be in any situation across the board. So if you apply that to cold calling, or even like lead gen, where it's semi warm, where somebody inquired on your website or your social media, and they're asking to be contacted. Many times those interactions are difficult and they're not good. But the quicker you can forget about the bad experiences, the quicker you're going to be able to get refocused, re-energized to try and search out for one of the good ones. Yeah. And I think that's the mindset you have to just go into it, where, the one video I was watching, they were saying that the top 1% in salespeople will usually be able to rebound within 20 to 40 minutes of an extremely bad experience. So something that maybe a big sale of theirs completely went away. Even if it was, let's say, their best one of the year, and it was going to be their biggest closing, they can rebound that same day and start searching for the next right away. Whereas the lower performing, the study that they did, lower performing salespeople, it takes them an average of 5 to 7 days to get over something that was drastic in their business or drastic in their sales funnel. And so, again, it's kind of like that speed to lead. It's like, I thought I was doing really great at 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, where some of these people with the wrong mindset into sales, they think I'm rebounding in 5 to 7 days. That's really good. This was my biggest sale of the year. I rebounded from this in 5 to 7 days, where the top 1% are doing it in 20 minutes. Right. So those are the things where it's like, once you just know those statistics, the same thing. It's like, that's what you have to go into mindset wise into cold calling. It's like, you may get yelled at and you may have a bad experience, but if you push past it, which, like you're saying, maybe the mentality for me is I just push through whatever's in front of me and get through it. You don't know what that next interaction is going to turn into. Like I was saying, 2 of the best individuals that I've ever gotten to meet in this industry came from cold calling, and it's like, got to connect with them, and now they're going to be lifelong friends. And that to me is just, that outweighs any one negative call that I may put out to somebody who doesn't want to talk to me. So,
okay. So structuring your team, a lot of, there's different mindsets on that, approaches to that. Our listeners are going to be at lots of different levels there.
Yeah.
For you, as you have built your team, can you just give a quick insight on kind of the order of which you did that?
Yeah. And the way my team grew and was created, it changed partially through, it started off real standard. So when I started talking to Chase Williams at Keller Williams about coming over, I was doing right around 2 to 3 million a year, so not much in the standards.
Which in the Spokane market at that time would have been what, average sales price 200, something like that?
275 ish, and I'm doing 10 to 12 transactions a year. So and during that time, it was just me by myself figuring it out. The previous brokerage I was at was just a pay per transaction brokerage, and no support, no guidance, nothing to really tell you like where to go if you have questions, and then also what you need to do to grow your business if you want to turn it into an actual true business versus just going out and selling homes. So sitting down with Chase, he kind of gave me the Keller Williams model. Here's kind of the blueprint of what you need to do to go from where you're at to where you want to be. And at that moment in time, I didn't even know, I guess, where I wanted it to be and where I wanted it to grow. So he even just like painted a picture. It's like, all right, here's where you can take it if you do these things. And the first thing that he taught me was leveraging my time. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there doing 10 to 12 transactions. My last year before joining Keller Williams, I did 3.2 million in production, and I felt like I was drowning. And to people who are listening, they're like, "Oh man, I can do that in my sleep." Great, wonderful. I applaud you. At that moment in time, it was all encompassing. I was doing 60 to 80 hours of work a week. And most of it was redundancy because I wasn't being efficient. And so it was on the paperwork side, things were getting missed, and then I would have to go back to my clients and I would have to, retrack down initials or signatures because I didn't have the systems in place. So Chase really hammered home, you need an assistant. If you really want to leverage what your strengths are as a person and as a real estate agent, you need an assistant that can take 80% of what's on your plate that you don't want to do off, mm-hmm. and you can hand that over and trust that person 100% to take that on. And at the time, my wife, Beth, she was looking for a career change. And so we talked about it as a family, and she decided, this is the right time. This is what we want to do. And so she came over and started working full-time with that, even more so, as a partner. Yeah. But she took on my organization, which is where I struggle. Paperwork, where I struggle. Doing anything on the, computer-based is really where I'm going to spend 5 times more time doing those compared to what she can do, which just freed up my time. So I can make calls.
And I was going to say, not just free up your time, but free up your time to do what you more enjoy and what is a higher dollar return average, I'm going to guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's how we structured it. And that's really, I think, key from when you're going from just being by yourself. The first thing you need is just an amazing person who's going to take on, like you said, those things to free up your time to where you're allowed to go out and do what you want to do. And for me, that's interacting with people, that's inspiring people, that's working with clients, that's, doing anything leadership wise that I can, volunteering. So I had more time for that. So the first year when she came on, we doubled our business, instantly. So we knew we were on the right track. Mm-hmm. So sat down with Chase again, and he was like, "Oh, yep, you guys did great. I told you to shoot for 6 million. You guys did 5.8, when you actually had support. On this next year, I really want you to hit, 10 million if you can, and shoot for that as a company." And so we added one more person, which is Jedvik, and he started doing, working with buyers for us, and then also really, really diving into calling. So he was calling warm leads, cold leads, any of our database, and he was setting appointments for me. So we went from myself to adding assistant to adding a buyer's agent, which is what the model.
Right. That's a traditional kind of grow your real estate business as a team. Yeah.
So then we went from the 6 million, and we actually hit right at 10 million, a little bit over. And so we were really figuring out the systems, and then sat down with Chase again. He's like, all right, this next year, going from like 10 million up, it's really a challenge to kind of hit that 12 million mark per year. So we're not looking to double the business this year. Let's just shoot for 12 million.
And what year is this?
This would have been 3 years ago.
Okay.
So to 2020, right leading into COVID. And so we were all on board. It's like, all right, we're just going to basically sustain at that point by adding another agent. Increasing production just by 2 million isn't a huge jump at that point in time. But by the end of the year, we had done 18 million.
Nice.
So through that whole time, and that's actually when you and I actually were running the office together. So I did that for 6 months.
Yeah.
Plus.
For those of you who don't know, Isaac was my hire when I was the team leader over at Keller Williams. Yeah. He was the rock star that I wanted.
Yeah.
And then COVID craziness,
COVID hit, and then we kept pushing. So in that year, we actually exceeded expectations by 6 million in production. So that was a really big eye opener that even in a crisis of COVID, what we were doing was working. Mm-hmm. And then through our interactions and recruiting and, helping run the office, that's actually when I got to meet Brian Monk. So we had done 3 cross sales together basically in 2 months. And our interactions were, very just really great. And the way he ran his business and the right way he just approaches life is very, very similar to how Beth and I do it. So it was this easy conversation to kind of talk to him about where he was at and if he wanted to come to Keller Williams. At that time, he was actually ready to retire. He was doing the same thing. It felt like I was doing a few years before, where I was spinning my wheels, working 70 hours a week. He had amazing assistant. That's Melanie Nelson, who's our transaction coordinating manager. So she helped him kind of coordinate everything. But we sat down, and he was like, yeah, what if I just hand over my business to you and you just take over my book of business? And at that point in time, I just presented an opportunity for him to keep going, because if he was handing everything over, going into retirement just didn't sound like a whole lot of fun for him. So we restructured. We actually completely partnered and joined businesses and brought everybody together. And our team took over most of the buyers for him, which freed up basically half of his time. So by leveraging us, he went from working 78 hours a week to, down to 30 to 45-ish. So from that, when you give somebody back that much time, he was able to, actually have time with grandkids, to go out with his golfing buddies. He's able to go on vacations without things kind of like falling apart. Mm-hmm. And we're 2 years into it, and, he's still going strong. But when we combined businesses that first year, so we went from, us doing our 18 million and Brian doing about 20, and we closed 166 transactions and just under 60 million in business. So that was my strange ascension to doing more production on the real estate side. So that not very standard. It started standard for the first 3 years, but then when we joined up with Brian, it just went supercharged. Right. And then we also opened up the Keller Williams Newport office,
which is where he's based.
That's where he's based out of.
North, further than Spokane, for those who aren't familiar.
Yep. And
probably an hour
north of downtown Spokane.
Yeah.
And then we recruited, we're right at about 15 individual agents that operate out of that office. Mm-hmm. And then also our team, we have 4 people that operate out of our team up there. So we're pushing about 20 people that are in and out of that branch. And all that was within, 4 years basically.
And that whole area, what do you think your percentage of market is up there in terms of
market share? For the deals that go through the MLS, we're sitting at about 70% market share.
I was wondering, when you have 20 people in a small town like that, and it's Brian Monk and you and your team.
Yeah, and then we were able to recruit some of the other very, very big producers for the area. So the number 2 office that was up there, and actually they bounced back and forth between Brian, because we took over all of Brian's office that was up there, and then we got approached by the number 1, number 2 office. They would, like I was saying, they would go back and forth on production, and they all came over and joined our office. So between the 2 of those branches coming together, we pretty much had the top, probably, we have the top 9 out of 10 producing agents.
You're always going to have the one holdout.
Yeah, the one holdout, which still recruiting her. So we'll see what happens.
There we go.
So we're probably in that range, right about 70% market share, which is maybe it's probably in the top 1% for Keller Williams offices for market.
Let's talk about teams, and with the context being, and we're obviously talking about teams, but like moving into the idea of retention and recruiting, right? I mean, like, people get recruited to a vision, and there's so much more to it than that. So as you've had the growth in your team, you've expanded to other areas, there's more opportunities coming already that we've briefly shared about in conversation outside of this. I mean, what does it look like to be how do you recruit well, maybe? How do you attract talent?
And it's a great concept, and I'm still working through that aspect of it. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily the best recruiter, because I don't actually really recruit.
Which right there, right? Like, that highlights an important thing. So you don't quote recruit, you're not a quote recruiter necessarily, and yet there's talent that's showing up.
Yeah, so I've been approached by every person that has joined our team. Some have worked, some haven't. Moving forward, what I've learned through 2 years of growing and then shrinking and restructuring, and then just trying to find what's the best fit, I really have to be more intentional about the recruiting piece. The onboarding and training, like you're saying, like, I recruit to the vision, and the vision for our team and our company, Heart and Homes Northwest. The name was specific because the heart portion of it is what I wanted to be on the forefront of the company, and because right now what we do is we donate $250 to one of 6 nonprofits from our closings that our clients get to choose. So they choose which one out of the 6 speaks to them the most, and then once they do that, we donate $250 to that from every closing, and we do that in our client's name. We're shifting away from that a little bit. Like I was saying earlier, we're starting our own foundation. So what we're going to be doing is taking $250 and putting that into the foundation from every closing. And then we're still going to be partnering with other nonprofits in the community based around homelessness in specific groups. So we're going to focus on homeless teens, teens coming out of foster care, single mothers who are getting out of domestic abuse relationships, sex trafficked victims, and first responders, and the military. So anyone who comes, through that, there's actually already a lot of nonprofits in the Spokane area that already address those issues, but they don't necessarily have the resources to address the housing portion of it. So we're going to come on alongside them and actually start working on addressing housing specifically. So we'll partner with the people that are going through their programs, and then try and be that resource to either connect them with philanthropic-minded property owners that are wanting to rent to make a difference, not necessarily just to rent to fill the space and profit, So that's going to be the goal, but that's the vision. So I've always recruited to the vision, and sometimes the difficulty that I've seen is that my vision for how we want to impact the community is really put on the back burner with other people, because right now, it is a for-profit business that we're running, and we have people who need to pay their bills, and so the mindset for some people who have come in and out of the team has been, the sales side of it. And I need to also train and recruit to where they're being successful in the sales side, and then we can focus on the vision, as time goes on. So for me, it is going to be, like I said, more intentional on vetting and finding the right people who fit both mentalities and are willing to put in the work in both. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe to kind of encapsulate that, it's sort of that idea, like you said, you have the heart before the home. And so a vision has to be bigger than just transactional and making money, right? And so you're going to attract then the people who are thinking bigger than just, I need my next paycheck. I want a bigger, nicer house. Not that those things are wrong.
No.
That's why we're in business, right? Is
right.
you want to make good money and make more money and grow and expand. And yet when the house comes before the heart, that's where we start having problems.
Exactly. And it's the whole thing where people talk about, if you do the right thing, and you put out, goodness into the universe, then, the good things come back to you. And that's a lot of what like the mindset has been. It's like we're doing things the best we know how to do and doing it for the people that we represent as the focus. And as long as we're doing everything for the right reasons and in the right order, then the money comes with it.
Right.
So, and that's always been our concept, and it's worked up until now. It's one of those things where it has allowed us to start this foundation, this month. And we can really start tangibly, positively affecting the community around us in ways that, who knows what it will turn into.
Yeah.
But if the economy shifts and things get worse, then, homelessness is going to be something that is going to be an even bigger issue than what we have, right now. And partially when we're looking at, teens coming out of foster care or currently homeless, we're really trying to hit the groups that can potentially have the largest gain in the future, and start where we can impact them the most long term.
Yeah.
So
awesome. So real estate is a hub of so many things in so many people's lives. And you, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, are an entrepreneur to the core, and you start businesses and then you grow those businesses. And so give us a quick rundown of your current ventures.
Yeah. The main one obviously is Heart and Homes Northwest, which is the real estate business. And then, like I was saying, we're pairing that up with the Heart and Homes Foundation. We also have Heart and Homes Insurance, which is where our real estate agents can get dual licensed and do real estate or insurance. Just home and auto is what we're focused on there. We also just launched a new division to our offering, which it's called Operations Solutions Northwest, and that is an HOA management company, and then will be a property management company, in the future. So those four are the core, and then we're the owner operators, like I was saying, of Keller Williams Newport. So those are the five, and they all feed into each other, and obviously we send the referrals back to Roofmaxx when we can, and that's another business we support.
Yeah. So for the agent who's listening, and they're thinking like, gosh, I've been selling houses, but I know there's more opportunity. Like what's a step or two they can take to kind of get that ball rolling, and what maybe if there's other opportunities besides even what you're already doing, like what are some things they should be looking into?
Yeah. Again, that's kind of comes back to mindset also. Another thing that I picked up, from Chase Williams is when a business opportunity comes, don't instantly say no. And I've just I've been rolling with that for the past, 4 years now. And, I think if I had been more focused on saying no to business opportunities, I wouldn't be anywhere close to where we are right now, present day. And keeping on that mentality, I'm hoping that continues, success in the future, because if I had the mentality of saying no, I wouldn't have partnered up with Brian, with our businesses. The insurance, company, it's not a huge producer yet, but we already have three people that are working for that company, and then Op Solutions that we just launched. My friend Christina, she was looking to start up her own business, and so saying yes to that, and that one's going to be a wonderful business as it gets going. But it's just that it comes back to that mindset of just not saying no. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you say yes to everything. It just means you go through, the actual opportunity of learning what it could be, mm-hmm. and what opportunity is being presented to you.
Right.
So going through can this be profitable? What's my, time, that I have to put into it, mm-hmm. for it to actually be, a business that's succeeding. So can you, again, on that side, leverage something where somebody else is super passionate about that business and they want it to succeed. Mm-hmm. So they take the reins and are doing, the majority of the lifting on it, when you're doing the majority of the lifting on your primary mm-hmm. business, and that's how I kind of have operated on all of those. But that's it. It really just comes back down to, doing the exercise of going through, is this going to be a profitable business or not? And is it going to take up all of my time, or is it going to take up some of my time? Can I commit to this to where it's not distracting me from whatever the primary business is?
Yeah. I love how you said, I from Chase, right? Chase comes up a lot in this conversation, and to say yes before saying no, right? Like as parents, like often with my kids, I say no, and then I have to catch myself like, oh no, I said no for like no reason. Yeah. And so to kind of get out of that mindset. But so often in business, we also are trained like you have to learn to say no. Yeah. Because it's easy to be a yes person in other contexts. And yet this is the second time I've heard this week from someone, where they say, I say yes, like be smart about it, run your numbers, but don't instantly say no. I don't know if it was at a conference I was just at or on a podcast I was listening to or whatever, but someone talked about Warren Buffett and essentially saying he says yes to a lot of things. And when that was said, and this is, of course, now I'm like one person even further removed. So maybe he never even said that. But the point being, like, when I was like, oh, Warren Buffett, he's the guy I would think he'd say no to everything because he's busy and he's so strategic and he is all those things. Yep. And yet he has a practice of saying yes, because that's where opportunities come. Mm-hmm. And as we wrap this up, I'm seeing over and over and over in these conversations I get to have with people, it's who you surround yourself with really, really, really matters. Yeah. So if you're someone who's struggling, you feel like you're doing, 12 transactions a year, but you're spinning your wheels, you want more opportunity, but you don't know where to find it, or you're stuck in a mindset of I have to be the one realtor and teams are no good. Like, I just want to encourage those listeners to say yes to potential opportunities, and to not just shut them out because maybe the people around you say you need to shut them out. Like, think for yourself. Someday you get to look back on your life, they don't, mm-hmm. and have it matter. Yep. And also say yes to a mentor. Like you were saying, Chase comes up a lot because he was doing his job. He was recruiting for Keller Williams, but he took the time to feed into me and give me, more than just the pitch on why I should hang my license at Keller Williams. Right. He asked me what I saw as my opportunity in real estate, and then challenged me that my vision wasn't big enough for what it could be. And when you have someone who's willing to challenge mediocrity in mm-hmm. your own life, mm-hmm. that's someone that you really want to keep around, because they're going to inspire you to do even more than maybe what you thought
you could do. And like you were saying, surround yourself with those types of people, and surround yourself with someone. In whatever industry you're in, somebody else did that before you. Find who that person is, and find someone who is going to help you succeed and wants you to succeed and wants to feed into you. Because if you find that person and you find that that help, like I was saying, it's going to either inspire you to do even like to hit your dreams and your goals or what you're shooting for, or they'll help you actually exceed them. And that's what happened. That's what happened in my case. I was painting small pictures. I had, I just had this restriction in my mind of what I could do. And when you have your vision opened up and you see beyond what those limiting beliefs are, then it's wide open after that point.
Yeah. And I think there's some people, who just like naturally can think that way. And a lot of us, though, have to be trained. And even like you just said, you have to have your vision opened up. It's actually someone else opening your vision for you. You had someone do that. And so when you find those people who believe in you and you don't fully believe in yourself, like to get around them as much as possible and learn. And then also, I'm going to guess, and this has been my experience, where you go around people who believe in you, who are thinking bigger, who are challenging you. That's where actually those other opportunities show up. Because a guy like Brian Monk, who is an incredible human being and an amazing realtor, said, "Hey, Isaac," right? Like he saw who you had become and who you were, and that drew him to you, and vice versa. So anyway, for our listeners, just put yourself around amazing people, and you are amazing, and just go for those dreams and don't let someone stop you. Okay, Isaac, our last thing, I like to ask this. Give us a crazy, touching, can't believe it happened, whatever, fill in the blank descriptor of a real estate story in your experience.
All right. So I have to go back to where it started. So my first transaction ever, let's see, I was 20 at the time, struggling college student, and I take these clients out, and we find a house. Wife falls in love with it. Husband's kind of on the fence, doesn't really know, what exactly, he can do with this home, but the wife's all in. So we go through the process, and we get to the closing table, and all of a sudden, both of them just change of heart. Like, we don't want to do this. And it was right before we walk in with the closer, like literally in the chairs outside the closing table with the closer.
On your first transaction. And
I was like, all right, well, why don't we just walk into the closing room? Let's go over, the paperwork. Let's see if there's anything here that can maybe get you out of this transaction, because you guys want to walk. And, I represent you guys. If you think this is best for you, let's get it done and see what happens. So we walk in, and there was a just over $5,000 sewer assessment on the property that wasn't disclosed by the sellers. So sort of made up scene, and I was just like, that's it. Yeah, we can't do this. This is $5,000 that the sellers didn't tell us about, and we walk out. And I called the listing agent. I was like, this is a deal breaker. You guys did not disclose this sewer assessment to us. So I told him, I was like, well, can I just take my buyers back to the house to do just one final walkthrough to see if they can, if they want to keep moving forward. So he says yes. And we drive back, and we walk through the house, and still we're on the upstairs of the property and going through the kitchen, through the bedrooms. Nothing really like calling to them about this house. I was like, okay, well, let's go down into the basement. And, it was a frenzy still at that time. And we were lucky to get a house under contract in my opinion. But when we were going through the first walkthrough, when they made the offer on the property, the sellers had put in this master bedroom in the basement, and they were like, we're sick, just peek into the room. But we don't want you to come in because we don't want to get you, pass anything to you. So we're like, okay, yeah, we're trying to be respectful. And she was in a robe. And so we walk out. And I was like, let's go down to the basement, since you guys didn't even get to see, this big bedroom that's downstairs. So we walk in, and it had a a pretty large, probably like 10 by 12 walk-in closet also. And we're sitting there and we're just looking at it. I just look at the wall and there's this outline of a rectangle on the wall. And it was just this little crack in the sheetrock. And I was like, oh, that's really strange. You know, I wonder if they had bad tape lines. And I got closer and it wasn't bad tape lines. It was actually like a perfect rectangle, like cut in the sheetrock. I was like, that's really strange. And then I just like pushed on it and it opened up a hidden room in the back of the wall. And it was just like a click and then it swings open. It was all on hinges and it was all perfect. And we get in there and there's lights, there's water filtration system, there's hooks on the ceiling. And so this was before marijuana was legal. They had a secret grow operation in the basement of their house that they were hiding, that they didn't want the buyers to know about, and that's why they were actually
they were sick in there.
And obviously, without giving away the address, this was actually a huge selling point to my buyers because they also had a secret grow operation in their house, and 100% sold them on the home, and they were like, we don't care if they don't pay off the sewer assessment. Let's just get us back to the closing table as quick as we can. But my theatrics in the closing table also got the sellers to pay off the sewer assessment. So they paid $5,000 less. And then we went back like an hour and a half later and they signed the documents and we closed it.
Oh, man.
So that was my first ever transaction.
And this is why you need to work with Isaac if you're looking to buy a house.
Yes.
So that's an amazing story, especially that was your very first one. And that you like through the whole like one that they actually had a leverage point of not disclosing the sewer assessment and then that you played it up and and that you still kept it together by saying, hey, let's just go back and look.
Just walk through.
And you discover the gold nugget behind the door. Yeah,
and it wasn't small. It was like they had put up a false wall in the family room down there. And so it was a quality, another additional closet, 10 by 12. And 100% sold them on the home. And they were like, we don't care if they don't pay off the sewer assessment. Let's just get us back to the closing table as quick as we can. But my theatrics in the closing table also got the sellers to pay off the sewer assessment. So they paid $5,000 less. And then we went back like an hour and a half later and they signed the documents and we closed it.
Oh, man.
So that was my first ever transaction.
And this is why you need to work with Isaac if you're looking to buy a house.
Yes.
So that's an amazing story, especially that was your very first one. And that you like through the whole like one that they actually had a leverage point of not disclosing the sewer assessment and then that you played it up and and that you still kept it together by saying, hey, let's just go back and look.
Just walk through.
And you discover the gold nugget behind the door.
Yeah, and it wasn't small. It was like they had put up a false wall in the family room down there. And so it was a quality, another additional closet, 10 by 12.